really fruitful gospel discussions I've had often start from abortion, because the connection is between valuing human life at all stages of development. It's just deeply rooted in Christian anthropology and theology, and a lot of Christians seem unaware that like it's probably like one of the first moral issues that Christians from the first century were against. Universally.
Exposure of infants.
Even the cults. You've got the Didache and the Epistle of Barnabas that are both probably late first century, early second century documents, condemn abortion from the outset.
As does the Hippocratic Oath.
Yes. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Well, it's just to take it back to the Matt Dillahunty thing. I mean, he always wants to get things back to slavery, and wants to be on the side of the good guys. But the slavery battle was won by Christians back in the 19th century, and then he wants to come along later and say, accuse the Bible of injustice because he's now on the right side. And it's a little bit like a soldier landing at Omaha Beach and wading through the water with his rifle. He runs up the beach shouting, I hate Nazis, and the year is 2020. Well done for being anti-slavery, but it does not cost you anything to be anti-slavery today. The battle was fought, and it was fought by objectivists. It could not have been won by consequentialists like yourself. It literally could not have been won by them. It was won only by people who have an entirely different moral framework, who happen to be Christians. And now, rather than running up Omaha Beach saying, I hate Nazis, rather than saying, I'm against slavery in the year 2020, the battle has moved on to other fronts where the humanity of all is under threat. And where is that under threat? Well, 125,000 human lives have been violently ended today. 125,000. That means, the number of people we've lost to coronavirus. We lost that many people to abortion by January 3rd, right? The number of people we've lost this year to coronavirus. We lost that many people to abortion by January 3rd. There is a genocide happening right now against the very weakest in society. And, the two reasons theologically I'm pro-life is Christmas and Easter. Christmas, Christ assumed our humanity when? We're told, Luke chapter 1, what is conceived in you is from the Holy Spirit. So from conception, Christ joined himself to our humanity. When does life begin? Like you're actually creedally unorthodox to be anything other than pro-life. Life begins at conception. That is when Christ joined the human race, from conception. So because of Christmas and because of Easter, because I have a theology of the cross that says God honors the weak and despised things and the things that are not in order to nullify the things that are. And God is not this supercharged, clever, powerful Zeus figure in the heavens. He is the God of the cross who is exalted in weakness and what looks like folly. And what could look weaker and more foolish than the embryo? And caring for the most marginalized member of our society. So theologically, that's where I'm coming from. And I think probably culturally, it was the A World Without Downs by Sally.
I remember. Yeah,
Sally Phillips. So on that BBC documentary, 2017. And just we're eliminating a people group. We don't have to imagine there's a Hitler figure who's trying to get rid of the disabled. Oh, we're doing it. There's no one in Iceland under the age of 5 with Down syndrome. Oh, have we found a cure for Down syndrome? No, we've just killed them all. So that really got me thinking. 2017, we did. He Came Down with one of our Christmas videos, which was Down syndrome.
Fantastic.
I think that was the best thing we've done.
Yeah,
I cry.
I can't watch it. Yeah, same.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Yeah, and just recasting, because the nativity is a little microcosm, it's a little world in which you've got angels and animals, and you've got kings and shepherds, the top and the bottom of heaven and earth, of all society, and they all orbit around the sun, and everyone in that nativity has Down syndrome. And I remember like pitching the idea to some friends, and like some of the friends were kind of like, "Oh, Jesus has Down syndrome? Are you sure Jesus should have Down syndrome? I'm not sure." Ooh. And that really disturbed me, because I'm kind of like, well, in this world, everyone's got Down syndrome. If Jesus doesn't have Down syndrome, what kind of savior is he? He, the unassumed is the unhealed. Yeah, and he assumed our entire humanity. I think he can take an extra chromosome in his stride. And so just seeing Jesus with Down syndrome in a world full of Downs, I think that's a beautiful Christian vision. It's just totally against the culture of death that we have in this world. Yeah.
Have you had much pushback from Christians about talking about abortion?
Sure. Yeah, and it makes us difficult for funders, and because they just want people who will play it a lot safer and stick to the gospel. So you have that argument that, let's just be gospel people, and this is not a gospel issue. I'm never quite sure on what the taxonomy is and who gets to say on all those things. And so Christians say don't engage it, and certainly from a pastoral point of view, it's very important whenever you preach on abortion to know that several of the people hearing you have had abortions, or who have caused their partners to have abortions. And so it's always vital to think of it pastorally, but in order to be pastoral, you need to name this thing that has happened.
Yeah. That is it. I've had that in pushback, and that's that sensitivity to people who do a great work in counselling in crisis pregnancy centres and the crisis Christian charities that are hypersensitive to the let's put pictures out in front of abortion centres and that sort of thing, and that there's that side of Christian response to abortion. Then you got the let's not say it at all from the front, and there's got to be a tension. And I think yes, we have to name stuff, just as we name slavery is wrong. We name taking the life of anyone in that way is wrong, and we've got to do that, but do it in a way that's sensitive. Is things like even divorce. There's people in our churches that are divorced, but it's not the ideal. And we have to tread carefully and sensitively, like we do with that topic, because we are all sinners. Yeah. But this is wrong, and we as the church should be fighting that beast in our society. That's what we're called to do as a church, and we're called to love those who have fallen under the beast's curse, but we are called to fight the beast nonetheless. I think that's a huge thing that we need to find the balance on.
Yeah, and it's an evangelistic positive. I mean, if you think evangelism is about trying to gain the most amount of consent from the most number of people, so that the most number of people are most warm towards you, then okay, don't raise abortion, but probably don't be an evangelist either. Probably
don't expect to grow your church.
Don't expect to grow your church, and don't expect to grow anything really, like that kind of vanilla. Always full of grace, seasoned with salt. There's meant to be bite there, and that's actually how people tick. They don't, I quoted from Tom Holland yesterday again on Twitter. I got to interview him last year, and he had this brilliant comment on, I'm just sick of bishops just peddling the same kind of soft left liberal nonsense. If I want that, I'll ask a liberal Democrat counselor. I don't want to hear about Brexit. I know what you think about Brexit, and it's not particularly interesting. And you can get that with evangelism, and let's just talk about love, and love's lovely. But like if you happen to believe that there is sin and judgment, let's say, and God is angry with the world, Why would God be angry with the world? Like, why is it just, and when we convict the world with regards to sin and righteousness and judgment, is it just sin in this platonic sense, this ethereal, or is it grounded? Really, we're really that bad that God is furiously angry with the world? Really? Why? We're quite nice, aren't we? And you're like, well, look, we did kill another 800 babies in this country today. Don't know. Does that make you mad? And if it does,
but it's not about me. I'm not part of that. That's the discount in the Western realm at all. At least we don't see society as the beast in the same way. The society is made up of individuals, and my individual responsibility says I'm a good person.
Right.
So how dare you say I'm responsible for killing babies? Is generally How do we deal with that as the church when our society is so fragmented to
that kind of atomism is exactly the problem that leads to abortion, because what we've done is completely torn apart ourselves from one another. So we tear sex from marriage, and we tear sex from pregnancy, and then we tear pregnancy from children. And we entirely and so in order to take the forceps to the unborn, like, we've got to actually take the forceps to the whole of society and say, it's not my problem, and it's just the woman's choice. And it's the woman, it's not the mother's choice. She's no longer a mother, she's a woman who has, the product of conception within her. And so we've entirely atomized things. Whereas, any society that has a future needs to be about children. And therefore it needs to be about families. And therefore it needs to put back together the things that our society has desperately tried to cut apart. We've tried to cut apart sex from marriage, and sex from pregnancy, and pregnancy from children from families. And if we're going to have a civilization at all, come home to Jesus. Here in the church, what do you have? You actually have sex in marriage with children and families, and it's woven together in a covenant of love. That's a holistic vision for life.
Where it's broken, it's grafted in. And I think one of the biggest things I've learned in the last 2 years of working with international students is that part of my gospel message that's been missing is the family of God. And that's the bit that's missing in the Western church hugely, is this. The church is a huge apologetic for the Christian faith. That, yes, you may have had an abortion, but you're welcome here. But we think it's wrong that's going on in society, that you've succumbed to it. But we love you and you're welcome here. You've had a divorce. Find your family here with us. Come home. Like that. That's a huge thing that's missing, and definitely needs to be heard more, and something I'm trying to bring into the gospel messages when I have the opportunity.
And if you don't have that kind of church family, you can't be pro-life either, because in order to be pro-life, you need to embrace the single mum. You need to embrace that young girl who's just gotten pregnant and say, brilliant, that's okay. We can do this together. Don't go to the clinic and get that problem sorted out, because that's not a problem that gets sorted out that way. Let's embrace you, and therefore the church needs to not simply be traditional conservatives on the subject of the family. You can't actually be pro-life and that.